Hi there, welcome to my course. In this lecture, you will learn about XSS exploited. XSS offenders. Cross-site scripting attacks can do more than just steal credentials or spy on a user. They can also be used to defame or attack a person's reputation. Under normal conditions, a concerned citizen would enter in a known name or a location to see if there are any potential sexual predators living and or working in the area. If available, the website provides the address of the convicted offender as well as the location on a map and some details of the crime. This type of website is a great resource for concerned parents, but the information has been known to cause the community backlash against listed offenders. As a result, this kind of site must be responsible to not only protect the offenders who have served their time, but also prevent the innocent from becoming an unsuspecting victim. Unfortunately, as you will see, it is almost trivial to create false content within this site that could seriously harm a person's character. Let us take a look at the familywatchdog.us site to illustrate. This figure provides a screenshot of the main search page. A user simply types in their search criteria and hits the search button to gain access to the information listed in the figure. When the button is clicked, data is posted to a slownamelist.asp page that searches a database and lists the matching offenders. Since this XSS example is through a post method only, a malicious person would have to use a post redirect or flash script to facilitate the attack. This information is undoubtedly valuable. However, is it to be trusted? Unfortunately, the answer is no. The reason is that the slownamelist.asp page is vulnerable to a XSS vulnerability that gives a malicious person all they need to create a spoofed entry. In our example, we injected the following code into the txt last name variable that is passed to the application service provider file. This is the code. This takes advantage of the fact that the results section is wrapped with a content hole div tag. Ironically, this tag becomes a content hole through which an attacker can inject seemingly valid content onto the target's web page. This figure portrays the results. To further support the accuracy of the results of the spoofed results, the name field is a hyperlink that normally takes the user to a picture and details of the sexual offender. However, due to the way the site is designed, the attacker can abuse one of the two functions contained within the JavaScript of the page. Under normal conditions, a click on the link will call a JavaScript is to edit clicked function which builds a valid URL with the following code. This is the code. This code basically creates a valid URL with the correct variables and then calls another function which opens a new browser window containing the specified web page. However, if an incorrect offender ID value is specified, then the page returns with a message of the offender information is being updated. Please try again later. The second way an attacker could create a valid looking offenders details window is to call the window opener function directly and specify the URL that is to be loaded in the new window. Hi there, welcome to my course. In this lecture you will learn about XSS exploited part 2. The Express Mail Personal Edition solution. Express Mail Personal Edition is a solution offered by Singular that allows remote users to access their email and view documents that reside on the host PC. In short, a remote user logs into the http://expressmail.singular.com/subscriber website. The web application then establishes a secure socket layer protected tunnel back to the client that is running on the host computer. If the subscriber checks their inbox, the client program will log into the server on behalf of the user, retrieve the email subject list and relay that information to the web application for the user to view, as shown in the figure. The user then clicks on an email subject, which is then pulled from the server by the client and pushed back to the web application. If the user selects the Documents button, the client will obtain a file listing from the specified folder and relay the list to the web application. This is the figure. When a file name is clicked, the client program will push the selected file to the web application, where it will either be available for download or displayed in the browser. An added benefit of having remote access to files on the PC is that a user can attach any file to a new email. Express Mail will automatically tie the file and email together when it is submitted. As a concept, the idea is clever and useful. A subscriber can tote around just a personal digital assistant and stay connected to their corporate network over an encryption connection. In addition, since all the documents reside on the remote system, the user can save space on their PDA and mitigate some of the risk of a lost device. The ACKit. Our research into this program employed the use of Burp. We used this program to monitor the hypertext transfer protocol headers, form values, and keep track of our history during the review. So, after executing Burp, configuring our browser to work with the proxy, and loading up the entry page. http://expressmail.singular.com/subscriber. We started to look around. Upon login, we first noticed the use of a cookie with the following content. This is the content. We were curious as to what these values meant, so we logged in and out a few times and deducted that the browser ID was a static value tied to our browser, and the ACID was the session tracker. To test this, we opened up a browser on a different computer and inserted the ACID from our valid session into an unauthorized session. The illicit connection opened right up and gave us access to the inbox or documents. The document folder. Clicking into the folder, we noticed that the URL referenced a documents.htp and appeared to be performing a GET request. We then selected a file called sample.htm from our folder and clicked on the link to open it up. Again, a new GET request and the sample.html file opened up in a new browser window. Hi there, welcome to my course. In this lecture, you will learn about exploit frameworks. Part 1. Attack API. Attack API is a web-based attack construction library built with hypertext preprocessor, JavaScript and other client-side and server-side technologies. It consists of many modules with dozens of different functionalities that can be used from the browser as well as from a JavaScript interpreter. The goal of the library is to provide an easy and concise interface for implementing exploits for testing and demonstration purposes. Before we start delving into Attack API subroutines, we need to do some preparation. First, download a copy of the library and prepare a testing environment where you can develop most of the examples. Next, download the Attack API package from GNU Citizen and extract its context somewhere in your web server root folder. For example, if you are using WAMP, you can put the files inside c:/wamp/www/attack-api. Once you are ready with the initial setup, open Firefox and point it to the Attack API folder served from localhost. You should see something similar to that shown on the figure. Go to Build to Test to fastestinteractive.html. This file contains all of the necessary elements that we are going to use over the next few pages. Because we are not going to do any changes to the opened page hypertext markup language content, open Firebug and resize the console to fit the entire screen. Make sure that you are inside the console tab and type dir. If you have done everything correctly, you should see an Attack API document object model structure as shown in the figure. Throughout the rest of this, we are going to use the $A object instead of Attack API to reference and call the library objects and methods. The $A object is available to stand-alone instances of Attack API and contains shortcuts to Attack API methods for easier use. Attack API is a highly structured library at the time of writing. The library was separated into attack-api.core, attack-api.dom and attack-api.utils. By using these conventions, the full path to Attack API base64 encoding function is $A.encode base64, which is a lot shorter. Since we are going to type of a lot of code, I suggest using the large command line as shown in the figure. Because we will be typing a lot of code, you may end up making mistakes. If the larger command line is open, you can make fixes quickly and easily. Enumerating the client. The first thing an attacker does once they gain control of the victim's browser is to investigate what client and platform he or she is attacking. This is easily achieved using the Firebug command line type. This is the command. The figure shows the information these functions provide. As you can see, the browser type and operating system version is easily accessible. However, attackers can do a lot more. In the Firebug command line type the following two lines of code. This is the code. The getCookies function retrieves all available cookies in an easily accessible JavaScript object so that we don't have to parse the document.cookiedom object manually. Hi there, welcome to my course. In this lecture you will learn about exploit frameworks. Part 2. Attacking networks. Being able to extract information from the client represents a small portion of what attackers can do. In many situations, client enumeration is just the beginning of a well-planned attack, which expands across several areas that are discussed. XSS attacks are not only about client security, because browsers are bridges between the hostile internet and the local network. Attackers can abuse various browser features to locate and attack internal devices. Let us see how we can attack an internal network with the help of Attack API. Like every other well-planned network attack, we are going to perform a port scan. This is the example. This figure shows the port scan result as seen from our browser. You can see that the browser correctly identified ports 80 and 443 as open and port 81 as closed. Port scanning from a browser is not an exact science. Therefore, you may receive a lot of false positives. To eliminate them, you need to fine tune the scanning process via the timeout parameters like the following. This is the parameter. Now, knowing how to port scan, you can try identifying open ports on your corporate printer by using something similar to the following. This is the figure. The timeout parameter defines how long the port scanner needs to wait for the currently tested port before it flags it as closed. If the victim is going through a proxy in order to access internal web resources, the scan process may fail. However, this kind of setup is very rare. If you don't provide ports for the scan ports function, Attack API will use the port list. Attack API is also capable of port scanning a network range. This technique is known as port sweeping and can be accessed via the Attack API sweep ports function. The following code demonstrates the sweep ports function's capabilities. This is the code. If everything works fine, you will get a result similar to what is shown in the figure. Attack API supports both the start IP, stop IP and the IP or mask notations. In the respect, you can use the following code to scan the class C range of 10.10.56.0. This is the code. To perform the network and IP manipulation yourself, you can use several variable Attack API utilities. Although identifying open ports and live systems is important, we can do more than just a simple port scan. For example, it is possible to launch attacks against internal routers with nothing but a single function call. There are a number of devices with the sole purpose of giving you the best directions on how to move on the internet. The first device is known as the default gateway. If you are a wireless user, this is your wireless router. When configuring and securing the router, it is possible to set it up so that the administrative interface is also available on the internet facing side. First of all, we call the request CSRF function. This is one of the many request functions available in Attack API that allow you to retrieve or call remote resources. Unlike request XML, which works on resources in the same origin, request CSRF works everywhere, but it is totally blind to the caller. This means that we cannot get the response back. The request CSRF function is called with several parameters. Hi there, welcome to my course. In this lecture you will learn about preventing XSS attacks. Filtering. Input sanitation can often look exactly the same as output sanitation to an attacker, especially in the case of reflected XSS. However, there are subtly minor differences in that with input sanitation, all the data is parsed, whereas output sanitation only applies to data that is written back to the page. In other words, if data is placed directly into an email script, only input sanitation will catch invalid content. Like we said, it is a subtle difference, but it makes a huge difference when dealing with persistent XSS attacks. In this case, output sanitation is the best option due to the complexity of trying to capture all malicious data. Input blocking is a simple concept and is similar to input sanitation. However, blocked content is immediately reflected back to the page. The most common place to find this is in error conditions, which are found all over the internet. Let us take a very simple example and say there is an input that requests a phone number. That phone number should take a specific format. There are some rules you would no doubt want to put in place to take into account things like extensions, international numbers, and so on. If the input does not fit the syntax of the expected data, the principle of input blocking would output a message stating you cannot enter the input until the data matches the input type expected by the application. Here is an application of an error condition. This is the example. Unfortunately, because the text has been reflected to the page, there is the possibility for XSSing through the reflection of the blocked text in the error condition. Error conditions yield the vast majority of reflected XSS on the internet. In fact, one of the goals of many XSS attacks is to intentionally cause error conditions so that the injected content is reflected to the page. So it would seem that blocking inputs has issues. What about input sanitation? Input sanitation is designed to exrub the content that the user inputs. After it has been scrubbed, it will no longer be dangerous and therefore can be passed on to the application. Many websites perform this method because it is the most seamless. There are many problems regarding input sanitation. For one, it is far more complicated than it sounds. Let us take a very simple example where the text of the page is set up to stripe out the text angle bracket script. Never mind the dozens of ways to circumvent this simple filter. Let us attempt to attack it directly. This is the figure. When scrubbed, the text will be changed to this. The figure shows the scrubbed text. At a first glance, this might appear to be a very solid filter, taking into account all the obvious issues out there, while still allowing some things like image, tags, and links. The filter is intended to allow content that is non-malicious, while blocking anything else. It even takes into account hypertext markup language, encoding in both hexadecimal and decimal format. Let us show a simple example that would normally work in IE 6.0. This is the example. This will fail because and hash x09 is a known string that is blocked by the filter. It would seem that this filter has done a pretty good job at first blush. But what it has failed to understand is that by trying to sanitize it ends up allowing our vector to fire due to the modification it makes to the code. This is the code. A and hash x26 is an ampersand